was muted. Those are all really different, very fascinating projects, and I love hearing about the paths that got you to starting those projects. So Alicia, you started your blog, Alicia's Life Tips, to help other young women reach their goals and dream big. Like, what have you learned from doing that? What are some like important messages you aim to share with your younger readers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest message I want to share is one that I'm still continually learning myself, and that's just to give yourself some grace. We all have our own internal and external challenges, and I share a lot about productivity and efficiency and self-development, but at the end of the day, these are all just tools. They're tools to help us feel better about the life that we're living, and in a place where, especially among young women and in the entrepreneurial space, there's been a big, pretty toxic community created around productivity and feeling like we always have to be doing and getting things done in order to be successful. But the way that I view these kinds of things about productivity and efficiency are really just to create more space in my life, space to not worry, space to spend time with family and friends, and focus on my mental health. So I think that's the biggest thing I would want to share with my viewers.
Great. And Bella, so you are working in the creative fashion space, and I'm really curious, what has been your experience working with other BAU creatives, and how have you gotten involved with other BAU creatives?
I think we want as individuals to stick within our small communities, but there's a lot of value I find in collaboration and going out of spaces that you traditionally learn from. And so I think that being part of BAU community now, especially with Project W, has really lent me to learn a lot from other people.
Great. And Karen, while at Olin, you've done really impactful work in the sustainability space. Could you tell me, and the other people here about the specific sustainability projects that you've worked on and how you go about tackling these really complex issues that seem very overwhelming to a lot of people?
For sure. So I can think of two main proposals that I worked on in the sustainability space. I was employed as an eco representative on campus, so I had the opportunity to work closely with the facilities director on a lot of these projects. One of them was a waste management proposal that focused on increasing composting, decreasing cross-contamination, and really focusing on reducing the overall waste generated on campus by students. The other proposal was focused on sustainable procurement. So that's looking at the root of where all our stuff is coming from, doing some better carbon emissions tracking for all the things that the college is purchasing, and looking at where our biggest sources are and where we can cut things. Both of those proposals feed into the bigger carbon neutrality plan for Olin, where we're hoping to have a carbon neutral campus by 2040 or 2050. It hasn't been announced yet. But in terms of facing these complex issues, knowing that climate change is like such a big issue that our entire generation and future generations ahead of us face, I've learned that taking a deep look at the root causes of things, using system thinking, and really thinking about like, I see these issues, but what is really the main cause behind these issues, and tackling the problem from there is a lot more effective than looking at then having band-aid solutions for what might not fix what's causing the problem in the first place. And so using systems thinking, really talking to your communities about their needs and who is being impacted and why is also really important. And the last thing I'll say is doing a lot of trial and error for the solution that you're trying to implement is also really key to solving these issues.
Great. And you mentioned a different way of thinking to tackle these issues. Is there any class at Olin in particular that has helped you with that you recommend people enroll in?
Yeah, I would say USCD, which is user-oriented centered design, is a really great class for thinking about or learning how to talk to your community in the first place and how to really dig deep into the problem. That's a really great course option. The other one that relates a lot to sustainability is the sustainable design course, where you learn things like life cycle assessment, and those are the bigger picture tools for systems thinking.
Great. Yeah. So Alicia, you, on top of Alicia's life tips, you've been working as a strategic project manager at Calix, and as a sophomore, which is super impressive. I'd love if you could share a bit about how you landed that position, and why you chose to pursue it.
That's a great question. I think, well, first off, I didn't start off as a strategic project manager. I had to kind of work my way up there. I started as a operations intern, and I actually got that opportunity through an alumni of Babson. He was also in an organization called eTower, and so he was just looking for somebody to bring on as an intern, and I applied and ultimately got the position. And operations was like totally out of my depth. I kind of felt like I was in over my head. I had only had one semester of Babson under my belt, but I still went for it, and I dove right in. And long story short, I ended up taking an interest in operations analysis, and I started to understand the database that we were working with. And then from there, I started just questioning things. I was like, well, why do we do team meetings this way? And is there a better way to go about setting the goals that we're doing for the company? And because it's a smaller startup, I think there were about 30 people in the company at this time, I started to get recognized by the leadership team. And the president decided to sort of take me under his wing and start throwing projects at me. And so he offered to give me a full-time position as a strategic project manager this semester, and I decided to take it. And I think ultimately, everything I've done has really helped me in understanding business, and I'll be able to take those back to organizations I'm a part of, whether it's Project W or eTower or my own business. And I think I've learned from a lot of the mistakes that they've made, as it's a high growth startup community. I've done a lot of different things, like I've helped to overhaul some SOPs. I've headed a sales consultancy project and company-wide quarterly reflections. It's been amazing to be able to make that much impact at a company. So I highly suggest that you try getting a position, whether it's an internship or anything else, at a startup, because there's so much that you can learn. And I think it goes back to what Bella was saying. There seems to be a stigma around internships, but you can literally learn so much by doing it and avoid making so many more mistakes in the future. And yeah, at the end of the day, it was just super valuable for me in my personal growth and in my professional growth. And I know that I'm going to bring it into all the roles that I have in the future.
That's really awesome. Congratulations on that. I guess, yeah, Maya, I'll pass it off to you for if you have some questions for the panelists.
Yeah, so Bella is actually one of the other co-founders of Project W, along with Maxine and I. So Bella, this question is for you. How can you share a little bit about why you chose to build Project W? And also being from Wellesley, can you talk about the value you see in women communities and Project W specifically?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the promises that I made in my application to Wellesley was that I would continue to build global networks of women beyond Female Hercules, which is the space that I created in high school. So I wanted my education and experience at Wellesley to empower myself and also the women in my field. When I heard about the ethos of Project W, I was immediately like, yeah, this is like the next step for me, because I conceptually understood the differences in psychology and culture among the three schools and the need for diverse and collaborative space for women at Wellesley, especially, where I think that our community can be really sometimes insular and like very myopic. So I think that the value that Project W gives is in creating a broader understanding of real world different ideas that exist in our community.
Yeah, thanks. I think amongst our Project W community, there's definitely a lot of sentiment around, interdisciplinary learning, and a lot of people share that desire to connect with other students. So I actually want to talk a little bit about our Project Pods program, which you participated in, and we talked about how we've done this first round of the incubator program and we're launching it again next spring. So can you share a little bit more about the program and specifically your experience last summer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my experience with Project Cuts is really great. I had never done an incubator program before. And what we built was a really awesome social media app for political engagement among Gen Z. And it's currently in the process of looking for funding. And I got to develop my coding skills and do some really interesting research this summer. It was really valuable. And what I love about this program is that it legitimizes passion projects. And I think every single one of the successful entrepreneurs and creatives that I've talked to through Female Hercules started with a seed of passion. And historically, I think passion projects started by women have been stigmatized and devaluated as like trivial and a pastime. And it's probably rooted in pre-industrial times where small projects like arts and crafts were delegitimized as businesses. However, like now in this age, we're like shifting that narrative and encouraging women to boldly pursue these early stage projects, which then can grow into real businesses and be funneled into other programs.
Yeah, thanks for that. I strongly encourage anyone who has an idea that they want to pursue to submit our submission form, and we sent that in the chat. So the idea submission process closes in 2 weeks, but definitely reach out if you want to get involved. And so now my next question is for Karen. And Karen, we've talked a lot about your sustainability work, but you're also studying engineering at Olin. And I know one of the reasons you were interested in Project W is because you believe it's important to empower women in all fields, especially in the engineering space. So can you just talk a little bit more about this?
For sure. So, engineering is one of those more heavily male-dominated spaces, especially if you're looking at software engineering or mechanical engineering. And the reason why I really believe it's important to have women at the table in these fields is because representation matters a lot, especially when you're designing products that is meant for everyday use. If you're designing safety-related things, if you don't have a woman at the table, there are lots of concerns that might not even be brought up in the first place because there's not enough representation. And so I really wanted to join Project W because I thought it was a great way to meet women from these other fields and get us connected, knowing that engineers are useful for a lot of different projects out there. And putting women engineers forward as options for people who can be skilled and people who can join these projects is a really impactful way to get a lot of women into the industry and into conversations that matter. And so I'd say I would highly encourage anyone in the audience, if you guys are considering going to engineering now or in the future, to do it and not be too intimidated by the male-dominated aspect of the industry, and finding mentor figures, especially in these communities, by joining places like Project W or other clubs is a really great resource to help you build your confidence and make sure you have people who support you in your journey.
Thanks, Karen. And for the audience, if anyone wants to get in touch with Karen or any of the panelists, we'll put that up at the end to continue these conversations. But Alicia, next semester, you will serve as president of eTower, the student entrepreneurial living community at Babson. And fun fact, Maxine and I also lived in eTower and actually met Alicia through that. So it's super exciting to see you be president of the organization. But what are your plans for the organization, and what do you see for the future of student entrepreneurship at Babson and the greater BOW community?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be in this position and be able to start making some change in this kind of environment. The mantra that I'm going into this role with is entrepreneurship for all. I think that as a community, we've developed a pretty narrow definition of entrepreneurship, and I want to make sure that we are supporting all stages of ventures and all types of ventures. And that includes things like lifestyle entrepreneurship, family entrepreneurship, creative entrepreneurs, and people pursuing passion projects, just like those on this panel. I think that there's a clear gap in who defines himself as an entrepreneur, and further a gender gap in who defines himself as an entrepreneur, and I want to make sure that we expand that definition to include anybody working on anything entrepreneurial. For me, entrepreneurship is more of a mindset than a stage or an industry, and so I want all entrepreneurs to feel comfortable, welcome, and supported, first in the eTower community and hopefully in Babson as a whole.
That's awesome. We're excited to see what you do, and also for this idea of inclusive entrepreneurship to expand to even more students. And so my next question is for all panelists. So everyone, you can just answer this and come in whenever you're ready. But at Project W, we value interdisciplinary learning. So aside from getting involved in Project W, what advice do you have for students from a different school looking to get involved in your school's ecosystem?
I can start this one off. So for Olin, a great way to get involved academically is to cross-register for classes. I know this is true of a lot of the other colleges too, but if you're interested in getting some exposure into the engineering discipline, or you want to meet people who are engineers, cross-registering for one of our classes is a great way to meet people. The other way I'll say is by getting a little bit into the social scene. For instance, if you have a friend that you know who goes to Olin, and they have an event on the weekend that's more social related, that's another really great way to meet people in the Olin community, knowing that the Olin community might seem to be a little bit more tight-knit than others simply because it's so small, but know that we're all super friendly and super excited to meet people from Babson or Wellesley or other places.
Yeah, I can go next. I think there's something really satisfying about building something from scratch, whether that be a business, a small project, or even a friendship. And I think the BOW Consortium has so many resources that aren't shared, which is super detrimental to an innovation that could happen. And at least at Wellesley, a lot of the collaboration that happens happens mainly with MIT, which is a school that we have a really long history with and tie with. So my advice would be to invite each other to your events. For example, invite a Wellesley person to speak at your events, or invite a club or a society for a mixer. I think the more we can have casual and even like dialectic conversations, the more we will be able to integrate with one another and be comfortable with one another.
That's great, Bella. As for Babson, I think that something really tangible that you can do is just poke around and find email lists, because I swear Babson has an email list for literally every club or organization you can find, and they will send you emails with all of the events. I know the Blank Center is a really great email list to get on, and they have events going on pretty much every day of the week. And especially with the virtual environment, I think it makes it a little bit less intimidating to just hop on that link and get to know people, get to know what's going on, introduce yourself in those meetings, and just try to provide value. And at the end of the day, I think that's really what hits with Babson students, is like when you demonstrate that you have value to provide to any discussion, or if you reach out to somebody one-on-one after. I think that's a really great tangible way to get involved with our ecosystem.
I love that. Thank you, guys. And this final question, I'll ask this before we open it up to questions from the audience, but so get ready to ask in the chat box after this. So what advice would you all give to your freshman year self? And I know you're only sophomores, so it's not too far off, but any words of wisdom that you would like to share?
For me, I think take more diverse classes. I walked in here kind of with very STEM-oriented mindset, but I wish I had taken more cross-registered classes and even classes in humanities and arts more, because that is a part of me, part of the passion and part of the passion projects that I'm working on. So I wish I could take it more seriously within Wellesley and the BOW community as a whole. And also just talking to more people. I think being at college is kind of like a live action LinkedIn, and I mean, among other things, but it's a really great way to network and get to know people. And I think that women especially tend to lend each other a hand later down the line in career, and this is especially the case at Wellesley with alumni. So it's really valuable to attend events like Project W events, where you can meet Babson and Olin students, overcome these preconceived stereotypes that you might have about other schools, and work on your businesses, work on your academic careers and goals, and just talk to people.
Yeah, I love that point about keeping it open and talking to a lot of friendly faces. That's something that I wish I had done more during my freshman year. If only I had known that COVID would take us all off campus and we wouldn't be able to do that as much anymore. So I would have told my freshman year self to go visit the other campuses more and go attend a lot more casual events hosted by clubs or of mutual friends that I know of that I might not be as comfortable attending by myself, but I would drag friends to go with me and kind of like expand the community that way.
I love that. I think that what I would tell my freshman self is just don't be afraid to lean on others. I feel like I kind of had an independence trip when I first came to college and I was like, I can do everything on my own. But I've just realized after talking to people from all three schools, people are so willing to give you advice and talk about their experiences and really just don't be afraid to reach out, to lean on others when you have questions. Even if you think they're stupid, they're not. Just ask and get to know people. I think that if I did that more, I would probably be even more accelerated than I am now.
Yeah, this is all really great advice, and I cannot stress how fulfilling it is to connect with students from other schools and get to, learn new things and get in touch with people that have different skill set than you. So really appreciate that. So now we'll open it up to audience questions. You can type your questions in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself, whatever you feel comfortable with. And also, if you have questions about Project W in general, you can ask that as well.
Okay, I'll risk it.
Thank you.
I'm David Eddy, MBA, 84. So in my day, there was one IBM PC, and there was no problem getting to it because only 3 people knew how to use it, understood how to use it. Roll forward to 1995, the Olin building on the Babson campus had been put in, and there was a small meeting announcing the future construction of Olin College, because the Olin Foundation was going to drop $400 million into it. One of the objectives was to foster collaboration between the 3 cultures: business, engineering, and liberal arts. I'll go out on a limb here since I'm faceless. To the best of my knowledge, this is, well, it was direct. I had in June, I think, of 2019, I think it was, I had 3 minutes with Steve Spinelli and asked him, has this Babson, Olin, Wellesley collaboration happened? What do you think his answer was? An immediate no. So this is a good sign that you guys are, collaboration is really, I'm an old goat, and collaboration is really, really hard. And particularly, one of the things that I point out to undergraduates is you're here at one of the schools for 4 years, and this is probably the last time in your life you will work on a team where the team is in the same room at the same time. And this is a huge communications problem, particularly when the business is spread around the globe. So kudos to you guys for picking up the baton, and keep it up. And sometime when the campus opens again, I hope to meet some of you. My favorite coffee shop was Woody in Reynolds. And here's a piece. All of you kids, none of you kids would, I apologize, but none of you would even remember what Y2K was. Anybody recognize that word? Karen, since you're the engineer, I'm gonna embarrass you with a question. Okay? Ready?
Sure.
Nod your head. Oh my God, but anyway, we have a number progression: 96, 97, 98, 99. What's the next two-digit number? Silence. Come on, Maxine, you answer. What do you think? What's the next two-digit number?
0, 0, 0. All right,
But anyway,
we're gonna take up
Robert,
some.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate the support. So a few people asked if it's difficult to register, cross-register for classes and make the scheduling work out. I guess I'll start out. First of all, have any of you cross-registered before? And if you have, no, Alicia, have you or Bella?
I have not cross-registered into Olin or Babson, but I have cross-registered into other schools.
Okay. Yeah, I guess like for other schools, I'm assuming MIT, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to speak to like how you make the schedule work out or anything like that? And just quickly for BOW, I know that before COVID there was a bus that took you to the different schools where you could like try to fit in the schedules. But I know if anyone has advice on that and has cross-registered, maybe Ash, if you could throw in the chat your advice for that because you've cross-registered at Olin a lot, that'd be really helpful. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you, Bella, on how you've done it.
So I think it's hard if you have not completed a majority of your requirements yet. I think you should take your requirements first, do the basics at your college, and take your cross-registered classes as supplementals almost, just for your resume, for your applications, whatever. But I wouldn't depend on those classes necessarily for fulfilling your credit requirements. In terms of scheduling, it can be difficult, but I think especially during COVID times, it's much easier with virtual classes happening because there's 4 classes that are happening right now virtually. So yeah, I would definitely take advantage of this moment right now to cross-register.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, one thing that I would add to that is, just to make sure if you're planning on cross-registering, to factor it into your schedule as early as possible. Like if you're planning on cross-registering even like years in advance, like in your senior year, your junior year, just like account for that and talk to your dean and arrange your schedule, because I know a lot of students who wanted to cross-register and then when they reach their senior year, they can't for whatever reason. And also since classes are virtual next semester, it's pretty easy, I think, to cross-register, and you can just attend an Olin or Wellesley or Babson class virtually. So I would definitely try to do that if you can. And Ash is saying there's also certain certifications you can get from all schools. So look into paths you can take to get that credit as well. And then we had another question: how does funding for cross-campus organizations work? Maxine, do you want to take that? Okay, I can go ahead. So it's a bit complicated. It depends what kind of organization you are. I know for Project W, we've tried to tap into different funding sources from each school, but there's not many cross-campus organizations. There's different centers like the Wiseman Foundry that supports cross-campus organizations, but there really isn't any clear-cut answer. You can definitely reach out to us if you're looking to start a cross-campus organization, and we can try to help you with the process. And Ash is also saying in the chat, the Presidential Innovation Funds, BOW.org specifically. And that's a Babson fund.
And then I see a question from up here. It says, how do you maintain like a passion when you don't have time to basically like make it into a business or something like that? I know, Alicia, you've kind of been in like that in between with Alicia's Life Tips, and all of you are really pursuing your passion. So if anyone wants to speak to that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I can kick that off. I think like the biggest thing is just to keep updated with whatever you're trying to be involved with. Like even if I'm not actively able or have the capacity to be working on the business, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I continue researching, even if it's just listening to a podcast while I'm on a walk, or watching like YouTube videos that are related to the topics while I'm getting ready. I think that helps to keep my mind going in the background, even if I'm not able to actively be putting time into it. And then also just having conversations with people about the topic. You can bring it up while you're having lunch with a friend or anything like that. And that just helps to get new ideas. Like I know for me, even if I'm not actively pursuing consulting, I will still like ask my friends, hey, how's your morning routines going? And I'll be able to be kind of slowly collecting market research in a very organic way. So that's pretty particular to me, but I think that just researching and talking to people in general are a great way to keep going with your passion.
I think also to go off of that, it's important that your passions have some sort of payoff. So even if you don't want to start your business now, start building your passion and your skill set, and maybe space it over the course of the next 4 years, or the next 10 years, or the next 20 years, and leave some time for you to develop those technical skills, those passions, so that if you wanted to start your business later on, you would be prepared and you would have something to go off of. So that's one piece of advice that I would give, because at least for me, I've definitely slowed down my work with Female Hercules. I've cut some of my team, but that's not to say that I'm starting to shift and work on it so that I would perhaps pick it back up more seriously after college, once I have real skills that could take it even further.
Great, thank you. So we have a question from Hunter. Do you plan to continue involvement with this organization after you graduate? How will you pass on what you are doing? And here I'm assuming you're talking about Project W. And for Project W, we definitely want it to live on for the long term and be a continuous part of BOW. And so I'm a senior, but we do have team members that are all different ages. We have freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and we plan to continue to onboard new members and really just keep the organization going. We're building an advisory board now, and we have consistent mentors, partners, and advisors helping us keep the organization running. Hopefully that answers your question. And Nelson sent a message, happy to answer questions about raising money from VC Angels. Thank you for sending that. If anyone's interested, you can check out his LinkedIn. And we also have a question from Ella. You are all working on very interesting projects. I'm curious, how do you know when to take your project to the next stage? What are your long-term plans for your projects? Whoever wants to start off.
I think I can touch base on that a little bit with Frank's calendar. I know that I mentioned I'm taking a break from the project currently, but that's kind of thinking about the long-term plan for a project and thinking about how do you know when is the right time to move your project in a certain direction. I think a lot of things that factor into my decision with projects is looking at your team and where they're at in terms of how are they balancing their academic life and their side projects, if they have enough resources and time to really dedicate to the project for the semester. The other thing is looking at your own learning goals. So for me, I felt like I did a lot of the learning over the summer, and I felt like I wanted to switch my focus back to classes. So that's kind of why I decided to take a break. But I also know that with a project, once the time is right in terms of like the people on the team have more time and I am willing to make more time for it, I can kind of pivot the project and go more of the business development track and do a lot more learning from there. So that's kind of how I decide where to take a project at a certain time if I'm at crossroads.
For me, I think like specifically for Alicia's life tips, it's kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of how much I put into the project. And for me, it's always been how passionate am I about it at the time. And there are some times where I feel like super passionate about it. I really want to grow it. And then there are other times where I want to focus on building other skill sets that would potentially put more into it later. And I think it's, especially with things like passion projects, it's important to understand how you're feeling about it and really listen to that gut feeling, at least in my experience. In terms of my long-term goals with ALT, I think it's really always been a thing that's just grown with me. So I don't necessarily have a super long-term vision for it. It's just kind of whatever it needs to be for me at the time. Although I am actually taking it to the next stage, because you mentioned like how do you know when to take it to the next stage? And for me right now, it's gotten to a place where my bandwidth won't allow me to do what I want to do. So I'm actually in the process of hiring an intern for marketing. If any of you know somebody who might be a good fit, let me know. But that's kind of for me the next stage that ALT is taking my marketing more seriously, trying to expand my audience in a more intentional way. And I just knew that because my bandwidth itself was constrained and I couldn't do what I wanted to do with the time that I have.
If I were to answer this question, it's a little difficult for me because I am not really sure about when the right time is to take your project to the next stage. I think that's a very personal question. But probably the advice that I would give is as soon as you're ready to invest yourself, your time, that's when it's a good time to take it to the next stage. And maybe even creating stages. Like, at what point would you, like, if you have reached a certain goal, would you say that, oh, it's time now to take it to the next stage and take this more seriously? So maybe create a map of, you know, where you expect your passion project to take you, or how far you really want to take it, and continue working on that. I think is the best advice that I can give you, so that you know, okay, at this point, like once I've got VC money, okay, that's when I'm going to really work on greater investments of my time and my energy. I think there's one more question, Maya, from Hunter.
Yeah, thank you. So Hunter asks, is there an equivalent to Project W for men, and or do you have men that have gotten involved in Project W? So actually, our events are open to all genders. So we've had many workshops and talks that are open to anyone to register, and we do welcome anyone. And there is a organization, a BOW collaborative organization. I'm blanking out on the name right now, so if anybody has it, you can let me know. But it is a oh yeah, Ash is mentioned in the cup. Okay, yeah, there's several organizations that are BOW collaborations, but for Project W, we just have a specific particular focus on helping women and supporting women. And then we have a question from Anne. How do you start? Who would you connect with? Oh, sorry. Do you have any advice for prospective undergrads? What advice would you give to a prospective college student?
So I think I can take this question. Actually, I really like this question. So when I was in high school, I didn't think I was going to put female Hercules at all in my application, but it ended up being my main essay to Wellesley. And one of the main reasons why I actually chose Wellesley as a women's college, I thought I was going to go to a D1 school for sports, but I ended up going to this really small liberal arts college with just women. So I think if you want to start as an undergrad, start with your passion project, because you don't know where it might take you, and it might be the most valuable thing on your application when you're applying to colleges, because that's what's going to make you stand out. And yeah, start investing in it, and I think it's worth it, even if you have to cut some clubs, because I was like president of my French club in high school, and I put so much money, so much time into that, and I didn't put on my application at all. So I think that's one piece of advice I would give for prospective undergrads.
Onto that a little bit, I think like if you can take what you're passionate about and frame a story around it and find a way to tell that story throughout your application, I found that that was very impactful in my personal applications, whether it was to college or anything else that I was applying for. So if you want like some help crafting that story or understanding it, I'd be happy to help. That's something that I really enjoy doing.
Great. Do we have any other questions? All right, so I guess we will close off this event now. We're leaving up the contact information and websites of our panelists if you want to learn more or get in touch with them. And also, if you're interested in learning more about Project W or speaking to any of us on the Project W team, please reach out. We have our Project W website in this chat as well, and Ash has just sent a link to join our community. So thank you again so much for coming. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.